I want to welcome everybody to the Sunday school lesson for August 1st. Thought I'd try to do this outside today just to sort of break it up a little bit. Hopefully the rain will hold off long enough for me to get through it, but again, just want to welcome everybody to the lesson today. And for those of you that may be joining for the first time, I teach Sunday school at Falmouth Baptist Church in Falmouth, Kentucky, and been doing these now for a few weeks on YouTube, and I've been doing a little over a year on my Facebook page if you want to go back and catch any of them up. We're going to be reading out of 1 Kings today, chapter 17, verses 7 through 16. We're starting into a series, second week into a series called Living Outside the Comfort Zone. So I always like to open with a word of prayer, so if you would just bow with me and we'll start off with a word of prayer. Dear Lord, again, we just thank you for allowing us to come together, and Father, we just thank you for this day and this time that we can share together. Lord, I lift up those that are going through difficult times, those that are suffering and struggling through just trials in life, Lord, and just lift them up to you and pray that they would turn to you for comfort. And Father, during this time, just pray that your Spirit would guide us and lead us through this lesson. Speak to us through your Spirit, Lord, that we may grow closer to you. And Father, as always, I just lift up the lost to you. Just pray that today they would hear your voice and accept the salvation that you freely give. I ask these things in Jesus' name, amen. Okay, again, reading out of 1 Kings, and lesson is all about trust today and having trust. The title of the lesson is called Serve with Trust, and the point of the lesson is service to God should be fueled by trust in Him. Always have a little question to sort of start things off in the materials that I have. And first one says, who would you trust to lead you through difficulty or danger? You know, who would you trust if you're in some trying times or some dangerous times? You'd probably want somebody that knows what they're doing to get you through those, or at least I know I would. In my materials, it gave an example of a fellow named Charles Blondin, who was back in the 1890s, was a tightrope artist, and he would walk across Niagara Falls on a tightrope, a 3-inch round tightrope, and as he would do so, he did a lot of different stunts. Did it blindfolded, did it dressed in a gorilla suit. I don't know why, but did it that way. Pushed a wheelbarrow across, and he would often issue a challenge to his audience, who were thrilled by watching him. Who wants to ride on my back as we go across? He had no takers except one. His manager ultimately did ride with him. So, you know, I wouldn't have done it. I don't know about you, but, you know, when you do something like that, or, you know, any kind of situation that's dangerous, there are people you need to trust when you do it. Sometimes when, you know, following God, it's hard to trust Him, because sometimes, you know, He calls us to follow His direction, but often what He calls us to do doesn't make sense. Doesn't make sense to us anyway, and from a human perspective, it just looks like, you know, God, why would you ask me to do that? Why would you ask anybody to do that? That's ridiculous. That's impossible, because we look at it from our perspective. You know, but we have to look at Him and not our circumstances to see what His will is. So this week's lesson, we're picking up again in 1 Kings, and picking up on the story of Elijah. If you were with me last week, we just introduced Elijah and his prophecy, and you know, he had gone before the king Ahab and threatened a drought, and then God told him to withdraw into the Wadi Kerith, where He would provide water for him, even though there was going to be a drought, and even though a Wadi Kerith means a dry creek bed, and that food would be provided by ravens. So, you know, Elijah has trusted God, and he's withdrawn from the kingdom because he's afraid that Ahab and his wife Jezebel may pursue him. They are Baal worshipers, and Baal had become the religion of the state under King Ahab. So that's kind of picking up the story where we left off from last week. If you weren't with us last week, it's on you can find it on my YouTube channel and go back and get the background. Picks up after he has gone to the Wadi Kerith and following God's command. So we'll go ahead and read through the verses again. 1 Kings 17, verses 7 through 16. After a while, the wadi dried up because there had been no rain in the land. Then the word of the Lord came to him, "Get up, go to Zarephath. That belongs to the Sidon, and stay there. Look, I have commanded a woman who is a widow to provide for you there." So Elijah went up and got up and went to the Zarephath. When they arrived at the city gate, there was a widow gathering wood. Elijah called to her and said, "Please bring me a little water in a cup and let me drink." As she went to get it, he called to her and said, "Please bring me a piece of bread in your hand." But she said, "As the Lord your God lives, I don't have anything baked, only a handful of flour in the jar and a bit of oil in the jug. Just now I'm gathering a couple of sticks in order to go prepare it for myself and my son, so we can eat it and die." Then Elijah said to her, "Don't be afraid. Go and do as you have said. But first make me a small loaf from it and bring it out to me. Afterward, you may make some for yourself and your son. For this is what the Lord God of Israel says: the flour jar will not become empty, and the oil jug will not run dry until the day the Lord sends rain on the surface of the land." So she proceeded to do according to the word of Elijah. Then the woman, Elijah, and her household ate for many days. The flour jar did not become empty, and the oil jug did not run dry, according to the word of the Lord he had spoken through Elijah. So we pick up, Elijah has gone out to the Wadi Kerith. We don't know how long he lived there. We just know that when he went, God had promised that he would provide food and water for him during that time. But eventually the water dried up. So what God had promised to him had come to an end at the Wadi Kerith. But God then, as we talked about last week, God, part of what he's doing with Elijah at this stage is training him, preparing him for what is to come, preparing him for the prophecies that he's going to bring in and the role that God has for him. So God now moves Elijah into the next part of his training. He gives Elijah 3 commands. First of all, he says, get up and leave. Leave where you're at. You know, sometimes that's what God does. He says, you know, I've been using you where you are, but it's time for you to go somewhere else. It's time for you to leave this area. Last week we talked about getting out of your comfort zone. Sometimes God calls us, says, it's time to get out of where you're comfortable and go somewhere else. So he tells Elijah, he says, get up, and he says, leave. He says, go to Zarephath. And God, when he does this, he kind of ups the ante with Elijah. You know, as I said last week, we talked about Elijah came in to speak out against the Baal worship and the pagans that had been, you know, that worship that had been brought into the northern kingdom of Israel. And he spoke out against that, that was offensive to God. And he says, you know, go to Zarephath. This is a city that was about 100 miles northwest, and the city's right in the heart of a pagan stronghold, the land that was, we see of Sidon, the kingdom that was ruled by Jezebel's father, Ethbaal. You know, so it's right in the heart of pagan territory. So he's basically saying, you know, you've run, you know, I've moved you away from danger and told you to go to Wadi Kerith and hang out there for a while, and I'll keep you safe. But now he says, all right, Elijah, get up, it's time to move. And now you're going to move right into the heart of the enemy, right into the heart of pagan country, into the heart of Baal worshipers. So, you know, you're going to be in Jezebel's father's backyard, right in his stronghold. But he says, you know, go. And then he says, and stay there. So when he says that, you know, this is not going to be a short trip. Last time we talked about when he went to the Wadi Kerith, you know, it wasn't a little camping trip. He stayed there for a good while. We don't know how long, but he was there for a bit. And he says, now stay there. Stay there because, you know, I'm gonna show you some things while you're there. And, you know, God tells him, he told Elijah, he says, I've commanded a woman who is a widow to provide for you there. There's a lot of interesting things about that part of it when you really think about it. And, you know, we go back to ancient times, and first of all, he's telling him, I'm going to have a woman take care of you. That was not something that, you know, you necessarily thought of as a good thing back then. You know, a woman did not have the property rights. In fact, a woman was often considered property herself. But here we've got a woman that's going to take care of you. You know, my wife has to take care of me all the time. You know, in this day and age, it's not unusual to have a woman take care of a man because, you know, us guys are pretty helpless sometimes. But, you know, he says, I'm going to have a woman, but not only a woman, a widow woman. And, you know, again, we need to look at the context. Think of what a widow woman was in that culture and in that society. You know, really kind of at the bottom of the totem pole. You know, you read throughout Scripture where widows need special care and need special treatment. Even in the time of Jesus, you know, they formed people to take care of the widows and the orphans. So he says, I'm going to have a widow woman take care of you. And not only that, Elijah is a Jew. It's going to be a Gentile widow woman. So, what God's asking, promising to Elijah from a human perspective, from his cultural perspective, probably made very little sense to him. But, interesting enough, in verses 10, 11 there, what does Elijah do? It says Elijah got up. Said, he didn't argue. He didn't complain. He didn't say, God, why are you doing this? Why are you sending me here? What's your plan? Tell me everything before I go. I need to know these things. And isn't that what we want to do? Is God, I think I hear you calling, but tell me everything. I need to know so I can plan and be prepared and make sure I want to do this, God. Elijah says he just went up. He got up and went, and he went to a place in all probability, if you look at it, he would have never dreamed of going there. God sent him to a place that he would likely have never gone on his own. Isn't that the same with us sometimes? God tells us to do something, to go someplace, to do something we would have never dreamed of doing on our own. I've told people in my Sunday school class many, many times over the years, I would never have dreamed of teaching a Sunday school class. When I started the church, after my son was born, my first son, my only son, I have a son and a daughter, but after my son was born, my wife came in and said, you can do whatever you want, but I'm going to raise our son in church. And I'm like, okay, I'll go to church with you, but I'm not going to go to Sunday school. Don't ask me to do that, but I will go to church with you. So I started going to church. And I've been teaching Sunday school for years. I would have never, ever dreamed that that's where God had called me to go. Sometimes God sends us those places that if it was up to us, we would never have done it. But Elijah trusted him. He didn't argue. He didn't complain. He just got up and he went. And it says he arrived at the city gate. And when he gets there, what does he see but a widow gathering scraps of wood? Probably an impoverished widow, someone that doesn't have a whole lot. Had to be really encouraging to him, don't you think? He showed up there and he sees the widow that he figures out this is who God sent me to. And, he says, they're in a drought. He's thirsty. He says, fix me a cup of water. And she goes to do it. And so when he sees that she's going to comply with his request, I think that kind of confirms to him that this is the person that God sent him to. He says, okay, well, while you're at it, give me a little piece of bread, just a little handful of bread as well. And again, probably doesn't make sense from a human perspective. He's asking a widow woman for bread and water, and and she turns to him and replies. I think it's really interesting. Says, I don't have anything baked. I don't have anything fixed. It's like, gee, thanks. I'm glad you showed up at my house, but I don't have anything here to feed you. So, sometimes company shows up at my house like, oh, okay, where y'all want to go eat? After you came to visit us in church today, I wasn't expecting. All right, let's go out to Howard's and get something to eat after church, or El Paso or the Two Rivers or wherever here in town. And it's like, she says, I don't have anything cooked. And then she says, in fact, I only have a handful of flour and just a little bit of oil in a jug. And to be quite honest with you, Elijah, I was getting ready to go home. I'm gathering up these scraps of wood, just enough so I can build a small fire, because I'm going to go home and I'm going to fix this. And then my son and I are going to eat it, and then we're just going to die. I'm going to fix a last meal for us. I barely got enough to feed us, and it's not going to be enough to sustain us, because we're going to eat it, and then basically we're going to die. And the woman is, looking at it from her perspective. How would we, as if we were in her place, we would have a human perspective and look at it. We would be focusing on that impossibility of our situation, and that's exactly what she does. She saw an impossible situation. Then Elijah really challenges her after making this request to her. He really challenged her to shift her focus from that, and to put away her fears. And he says, don't be afraid. Go and do as you said. But first, before you do that, go do what you were doing. But before you do that, bake a small loaf, just a little bit, and bring it to me. So here's a woman's barely got enough. It's not even going to sustain her and her son. And he's saying, bring me a little bit first. Fix some for me first and bring it to me. And in verse 14, and he makes a promise. He said, based on the authority of God, Elijah had learned that God keeps his promises. You know, Elijah in the Wadi Kerith has come to trust God. And when God promises and said, I'm going to do something, Elijah has come to trust him and knows that God is going to do it. He knows that God has provided for him. He knows that even though this looks like an impossible situation with a widow woman and a child that's about to die because, of starvation, that God's going to keep his promise, that God is going to use this woman to provide for Elijah, to provide for him. So he believes that, and he makes a promise to the widow woman based on the authority of God. Excuse me, folks. He says, "The Lord God of Israel will not allow the flour jar or the oil jug to run empty until God sends the rain." As we talked about last week, the Baal worshipers believe that Baal provided the rain, and part of the challenge of the drought is to show the authority of Yahweh, the God of Israel, over the Baal, this fake God that the Baal worshipers and that Ahab and Jezebel are worshiping. And he says, it's not going to run dry until God decides to bring rain. Excuse me, folks. The widow woman at that point, she could have easily ignored his request. She could have easily just said, "No, I'm sorry, no, thank you. My son and I are about to die." But instead, the scripture says she proceeded to do according to the word of Elijah. She trusted and obeyed the word of God's prophet. She went and did, and as a result of her faith in God, it says the woman and Elijah and her household ate for many days. The flour and the oil never ran dry throughout this drought. God had provided, each day for them. He kept his promise for them. He, as long as she did what she was requested to do, it was a daily routine throughout the drought. Excuse me, folks, sitting outside, and maybe should have stayed inside. But each day she had to go back and provide the food, and each day God provided enough to get them through that day. It says they ate for many days, and if you look over in Luke chapter 4 verse 25, there's some indication that this drought lasted for 3.5 years. So this was not just a short-term situation. I'm sitting here, when I came out and decided to do this outside, I thought, I think I feel a couple of drops of rain. I was down at the farmer's market this morning and talking to one of the fellows, and someone asked about rain, and he said, it rained all around him last night. Said he desperately needs some rain in his field and for his crops because it's been dry. And we don't often experience that kind of drought that this is. Here possibly a 3.5 year drought. These were difficult, dire times. Obviously, likely people around were starving to death because this area where Elijah was and where he'd gone was known for its grain and its crops, and with a drought, that folks were losing their livelihood. So each day the woman would go to the jar and to the flour bin, and there would be enough there to make that sustenance. It's kind of interesting. Here we have Elijah following God's will and showing how he trusted in God and sharing that with someone else. And because of his trust, she came to trust God. And that's something as believers, we need to keep in mind, that if we show our faith in God and show that we trust God to get us through difficult times, and we all will go through difficult times from one time or another, if we can show that faith and trust ourselves, it's a witness to others to show that, if you just place your trust in God, doesn't mean everything's going to end up great. Doesn't mean everything's going to work out just perfect. No. But, just showing that faith in difficult times is a witness. And Elijah's faith and trust, led another person to faith and trust in God. Just last Sunday, our pastor was preaching about difficult days and how, different reasons for going through difficult times. And I know I was sitting there thinking of some of those. And he talked about sometimes it's being a witness to others. And I can remember over the years talking to people, I have had people in my Sunday school class who maybe had a parent going through breast cancer, or a relative, that had just passed away unexpected. And sometimes, tell them that, sometimes God puts you through this situation so that when you have a friend going through the same thing, another young lady who maybe has a mother going through breast cancer, maybe that's, part of this is so that you can witness to that person and be there for them. Or someone that's lost a parent, you can be there for them. Here, by just showing that trust and that faith that Elijah did, it was a witness to the woman, and she came to trust God herself. And look at the result. Each day she went and had enough to fix that day's provision for them. The other interesting part of that is, and it's an important part, is it was each day. It was a daily exercise on her part. She had to have the nourishment. She had to have the faith in God each and every day. It wasn't a situation where she just, people exercise a lot of faith, and I'll put it in the storage bin over here, and I'll just draw on it, and then when I need it again, I'll go back and to God and try to get some more. This was daily. She daily spent time trusting God. So many of us, we laugh and call people the creasters that come to church on Christmas and Easter. They get their dose of religion on Christmas Day, Christmas season, or Easter Sunday. They show up and you never see them again. But that's sad, but it's kind of a commentary on all of us. Some of us, may sit in church every Sunday, and that may be the only time that we spend any time with God. And even sometimes when we're there, we're not really there. This is just to show us this lesson. I think part of it is to, also show us that we have to have trust daily. We have to go daily to Him for nourishment. We have to spend time with Him daily. And that's difficult sometimes. I mean, there may be some super Christians out there that never miss a day. Well, I'm not one of them. This lesson spoke to me as I was preparing it, that maybe I need to step up my game some. I don't claim to be a super Christian. I just, I am who I am, with all my faults and failings. But this lesson, part of it is, part of that trust of God. It's every day we need to trust Him, but every day we need to spend time with Him. How can we know where God wants us to go if we don't spend time with Him? If we don't spend time letting Him talk to us. I was driving home last night, and a song came on my radio, and the whole theme was, the song was "Don't You Think You Ought to Worship Me?" And it was basically God talking to his children and saying, I appreciate the time, sort of like God saying, I appreciate the time with you. I appreciate, your concerns, your prayers, your needs. But part of it too is, don't you think you ought to spend time worshiping me? Shoot, sorry. And it just made me think of that so often we go to Him with just what we need, and we don't spend time to thank Him, to worship Him, to praise Him, and to ask God, now God, what do you want me to do? I think that's what this lesson kind of is about, is being willing to listen to God, listen for His voice, and do what He asks us to do, to have the trust to do what He asks us to do, even in days and times where we just don't feel comfortable doing them, times where we're not sure why God you would ask us to do this. Why would you ask us to go here? Why would you ask us to do that? I don't know how many times over the years, I've heard pastors, preachers, say when they got the call, to the pastor, how difficult it was for them, to make that decision to answer the call, because, the things they would have to give up, lifestyle that they might have to change, things that their family might have to go through because of those change. And, thank God they follow the call. Sometimes God calls us to do things that we're not comfortable doing. He wants to move us out of that comfort zone. That's sort of the whole series of this lesson, is what it's about, is listening to the call of God and responding. So I'm pretty well out of time. I don't like to run these too long, but my prayer for you and for me is this week is that we do spend that time for daily nourishment, that we do spend that time growing and strengthening our trust in God, and listening for His call, and more importantly, obeying that call when He does call, because we don't know from day to day what he's going to ask us to do. And some of those things that he asks us to do may be very uncomfortable, things that we would never dream of doing. And, you know, we always want to limit ourselves. We always want to limit what we think God can do through us. And if you look at here Elijah and look at the widow woman, you know, look at what she was facing, the impossibility of her task. So maybe God's calling you, first of all, to be saved if you're lost. You know, he can't use you while you're lost, you know, other than as a bad example maybe. But, you know, first of all, if you're lost, he needs you to come to him and be saved. And if you're saved, then are you and am I putting God in a box and saying, well, this is all you can do with me, God? I think this lesson tells us, no, God can do whatever he wants with us, but it takes faith and it takes trust on our part. So my prayer for all of us this week is that we'll look for God's leadership, God's guidance, and then we'll have the courage to just trust him, even though it may be uncomfortable. So I'm going to close with that. We'll be back, Lord willing, next week as well. I'll get this up on YouTube here shortly. And again, if you don't have a church home and you're near Falmouth, Kentucky, certainly welcome you to come and worship with us. Sunday school, Bible study, whatever you want to call it, Sunday morning at 9:45. Worship service at 10:45. We're at the corner of 4th and Maple in Falmouth, Kentucky. Again, Falmouth Baptist Church would love to have you with us. If you don't have a church home and you're not in this area, you know, I would encourage you to find a church. The videos are fine, and maybe you still have some discomfort of getting out, and I appreciate that and certainly understand that. But when you feel comfortable and ready to get out and go to in-person worship, find a church of your choice, and go spend some time with God. You might just be surprised where he'll call you and what he'll ask you to do. I know I have been. So God bless you, and Lord willing, we'll see you here next week.